Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Need a Lift. That's right, the Need a Lift podcast with me, your happy host, Clyde, always. And I'm coming at you live, as always, as ever, from the city by the bay, and I'm in my bay window, and it's a beautiful day today, let me tell you. Sun is shining, blue skies above, and nothing but. And it's a great day for you to have a lift up, whoever you are, you artist, you creator. You doer of wonderful things. You thinker of wonderful thoughts. So thanks for being here with me. If you're here, it's because you need a lift. You're looking for a little. You don't want to get knocked down. I would never knock you down. I'd only ever pull you up. I'd pull you up by your shirt collar. And then you're going to have to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Don't worry about it. You can do it. It is possible. You can get started. And that's what today's pep talk is all about, everybody. It's about those times when you got an inkling, you got a feeling, you got a little something stirring within you. Oh, when you know you got to get started. It's just about there. It's been visualized. You've seen it, maybe not so clearly, but you've seen it in your mind's eye. You know it's worthy of being out there into the world, or at least you're halfway convinced that it's worthy of being out there in the world, but you sat down to get started, or maybe you stood up to get started. I don't know what your craft is. It could be anything. It could be witchcraft for all I care. But you attempted to get started on this thing that you know it's worthy of being in the world, or at least you're half convinced. You're pretty damn sure it ought to be in the world, and you know that you can bring it into the world, but there is something stopping you from starting. Now, starting's a doozy. It's like starting a snowman. It's rough. Once you get it going, it ain't so tough. But getting started is the hardest part. There's a lot of rust to knock off. Don't worry about it if your phone's ringing. Ignore it, man. Like, for instance, if you're just starting a podcast and then your phone starts buzzing off the hook. Who knows who it is? It could be fucking anybody. Anyway, my point is, I'm sorry, I got off topic. My pep talk is for anybody who's having trouble getting started. And, of course, the solution is real easy, but anybody could have told you this. Just get started. Now, what's holding you back? I'll tell you what. It's a fear of failure. And don't we all suffer from that? There is this insecurity within us all that says, you know what? You might fail. Now, this could be bad for somebody who's walking a tightrope with no safety net. Yeah, that's a very rational fear of failure. If you fail, you splat. You done for. But if you're trying to draw a caricature of your third grade teacher, music teacher, for instance, because he had a funny looking mustache, and granted that's a little weird to be doing when you're 34 years old, but let's say that's your project, that's your craft, that's what you're setting out to do, is draw a caricature of your third grade music teacher because he had a funny mustache, right? But you put the pen to the paper, and what happens? You stop. Because there's this little, this little sprite, this little imp, this little Rumpelstiltskin who's dancing around on your shoulder saying, man, you are gonna fuck it up. Well, all I can say is I've been there. I know exactly how you feel. I know what it feels like to get halted in your tracks by some unseen, unknown entity that not only insists that you will fail, but that actually coaxes you into failing. Now let's examine, though, real quick from a creative standpoint, what actually is a failure, because you might argue that there are no failures. So long as you learn something in fucking it up, whatever it is. Like, for instance, I'm not a sculptor. Well, I dib and dab, but I don't consider myself a sculptor. But I can only imagine if a sculptor has just spent the last 7 months tapping away, chiseling away at a chunk of marble, and has something reminiscent of La Pieta. Something awe-striking, something brilliant, something flawless. A work of pure beauty before them, right? And there's one little chunk they gotta knock off, and somehow they fucked it up. And kabang! Half of the sculpture falls off. Things ruined. Now that would be a colossal failure. Or would it be? Because perhaps, had you not knocked that big chunk off, you would not know later in life, when you're working on a project of an even grander scale and have invested even more time, when you go to knock off that one chunk, you'll say, hold up. This is what I did last time, and I fucked the whole thing up. I'd better come at it from a different angle and come on, ding, done. Thank goodness. Thank your lucky stars you fucked it up so bad earlier. Now, can you do that? Now, that's an extreme example, too, by the way. That's an extreme example, especially taking it back to my first example of the man who just wanted to draw a caricature of his third grade music teacher. That might be you. That might be you. All right, there's a million little examples. That is to say that any failure is not really a failure so long as you learned what not to do. Now, there's a million times I could cite. There were a million bad sets that I had. Not sex. I'm talking about sets. Performances. There were a million bad performances that I put out. Oh, Lord. And it's not a day goes by. I know this sounds crazy, but not a day goes by that at least one of them doesn't just pop into my head for 1 second. And I go, ooh, that was so bad. Oh, dealing with hecklers and whatnot. When you're getting your start as a bard, that's right, I am a bard. I know that sounds like a far-fetched claim, but it's true. I'm an orator, a storyteller, a poet, a professional one at that. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true, man. It's true. I wouldn't shit you. Anyway, when you're getting your start as a bard, you wind up regaling a whole lot of audiences who are saturated in the good stuff, in the juice brought forth by Bacchus, Dionysus, feeling luscious, feeling loose, feeling limber. I had some audiences that were a little mouthy, and sometimes I would fly into a narcissistic rage. And I know that sounds terrible, and I'm sorry to admit it, but I'm admitting it to you. It's not like I'm perfect. Half of every pep talk you'll ever hear on this podcast is me pepping myself back up too. There is no failure. So, for instance, at that time, when I got heckled by a drunk guy in a bar and I flew into a narcissistic rage and my face went red like a beet and steam poured out of my ears and I shouted bloody murder at this guy at the top of my lungs and everybody in that bar went, this isn't fun anymore. And I said, I know it's not fun, but it's his fault. He did it. And, of course, that guy's sitting there, drunk as a skunk, like, wow, this show just got good. Anyway. That's what I'm talking about. Now, that could, yeah. No, that certainly is. That was a failure. That was not in line with my intention. That's for goddamn sure. But what did I learn? I learned something. I learned a valuable lesson through that failure. And I haven't flown into a narcissistic rage since. And in fact, I've made a point to avoid audiences where I can foresee something terrible happening. Or at least where I can weigh the odds. I'll say, well, there's like a 60% chance that this is going to go bad. Maybe I'll just take a dip. What have I got to lose? Nothing. Nothing, exactly. That's the other thing I guess I got to say about your fear of starting. You have got nothing to lose and everything to gain. What is that, your fear of failure? It happens to me. It happens to everybody. I'm sorry to liken everything to myself, but I am kind of the star of this podcast. I can't help it. I've got my own experiences to draw from. I can't go making up funny examples all day long about you drawing a caricature of your third grade music teacher because he had a funny mustache, which you can do, by the way. You ought to do it. Don't be scared. Anyway, what happens to me? Sometimes I'm a juggler. Not a professional juggler, but a pretty damned good one. And in fact, I've been working on my 5-ball cascade. And any juggler in the audience will know that that's where you juggle 5 balls in a specific pattern that looks like a cascade. And it's really beautiful, okay? So I've been working on that, but it's tough and it's a doozy. All right? And in front of a live audience, it's the kind of thing that might just, rattle your nerve. Might make you a little shaken up, to know that there's a whole crew, a whole crowd of people just watching you. And every time you drop it, they think, whoa, That cat just dropped it, man. What a hack. But that's not what they're thinking at all. That's just what you think they're thinking. Therein lies your fear of failure. Now, this is a metaphor, too, for you, perhaps, unless you are a juggler and you are working on your 5-ball cascade. But all I can say is every time I dropped it, boom, yeah, what happened? Whoa, yeah. Don't crumble and die. Don't wait for that heckler to say blah, 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 and then you fly into a narcissistic rage. Don't do that. You know that's the wrong thing to do. But I, for one, when I'm practicing my juggling moves in the park, although it scares the shit out of me to get started knowing that I'm going to drop it and that there are people who are going to be looking, judging me, because perhaps I look like a clown, flummoxing, fucking it up, throwing them up and dropping them all, having them collide in the air. These are things that are obviously wrong. These are things that I obviously did not plan to do. But they happen, right? They happen. So, the more I do it, though, in the course of that juggling session in the park, the more success I begin to have. Confidence breeds confidence, and before long, I'm keeping them up for good and long enough, and I'm starting to look real, professional, and then... And again, all of these critics in my mind are completely imaginary. In fact, most people in the park are probably too busy concerning themselves with their own affairs than to look around and then judge the clown who's tossing balls in the air with assorted degrees of success. Anyway, overcome your fear of failure. Get started. Now, I think there's a lot of people, too, that have trouble getting started because they want it to be perfect from the outset. From the onset. The outset. Anyway, they want it to be perfect from the outset. Perfectionism. Now, I'd say there's nothing wrong with having a, meticulous eye for detail in everything you do. Because why not? Why shouldn't, if you're going to do a job, at least do it right? But... you have to, if you're going to get shit done. That's another thing about getting shit done, and I think there's been self-help books written about that. I haven't read them, because I don't need them, man. I don't need self-help. All right, but this isn't about me. Anyway, going on. This is about you, because you need a lift. Because maybe you're trying to get started, and you just can't get started. And it might be your fear of failure, or this other situation, it might be that you're a perfectionist, and you want everything to be perfect from the outset. Now that's like going back to the sculpture example. Now, this man is not having like a perfectly realistic looking head and then a torso out of a square block of marble. He knocks it away. It's a rough shape that slowly gets more and more detailed as he she goes. Sorry. I didn't mean to generalize and suggest that all sculptors are male. In fact, I know of a really fantastic sculptress, because I check her out on the Instagram, and she is making some things that, the masters would have been impressed with. I'm telling you that. Anyway, back to this example, overcoming perfectionism. If you've got to hack one out, it sounds terrible, but hack it out. If you're having trouble getting started, hack one out. Sometimes when I'm having trouble getting started, I free write. And you don't want to hear what my free writes sound like. You don't want to know the actual contents of my brain because it might just astound you. You might say astonish you, not astound. Astonish you. You might be blown backwards by the shit that goes on in my brain. But I'm just saying, that knocks the words loose. I'll sit down and I'll write what's going on in there, and then at the end of 2 pages, I'll say, wow, that felt good. That was all bunged up in there, and it just needed to come out. So you get the shit out, and then champagne flows from there. So keep that in mind. If you're having trouble getting started because you're worried that it's not going to be perfect, then hack one out. Create something with the intention of it being imperfect, and then read it through, or look at it, or scribble it, or just do something. Doing something is always better than doing nothing, all right? Now that brings me to my last point in this pep talk, and that is, there is, at least in my experience, and not just in my experience, I gotta liken this to the entire world. We are living in a beautiful modern world filled with all kinds of modern amazements. There are oddities among us that we walk by. We don't even notice them because they're just so commonplace. But bring a Cro-Magnon. Bring a Cro-Magnon to this block and drop him right here. Put a cell phone in his hand. Show him how to use it. Holy motherfucking shit. That guy would have a field day. Our whole world is a mind-blowing carnival to a Cro-Magnon, man. Anyway, there is a correlation, and that's reflected in our modern world, a correlation between hard work and happiness. Oh, I know, I sound like such a blowhard right now, but I'm serious. If you put a little bit of effort in a little thing, then you look at the product of your little bit of effort, you will say, yeah, it's all right. Might be a piece of shit. You might say, oh, it's a piece of shit. Good thing I didn't invest too much effort. Conversely, if you've got a grand old project and you put every ounce of effort possible toward rendering said project, bringing said project into the world, you will experience a sense of euphoria as yet unfelt in your life. I'm serious. Maybe set yourself a year-long project. Mark my words. Today's the day. Set yourself a year-long project. I don't care what it is. Be it sculpting a marble sculpture, or writing a novel, or painting a 75-foot mural in your parents' backyard. I don't care what it is. It could be fucking anything. Maybe you're going to crochet a scarf that's 59 miles long for breast cancer research. I don't care what it is. It's going to take you a year. Just figure it out. Do your grand project. Make your magnum opus. Write your symphony. Because you can do it. And whatever it is that you've envisioned, I know you've envisioned it too. Everybody's walking around, oh, I got this idea for this thing. Oh, I got this idea for this thing. I just don't have the time. You have the time. Stop scrolling. Stop swiping. Stop clicking. Stop swishing. I don't know, whatever the fuck the other thing is. That thing you do with the stories, right? You scroll. No, you're not scrolling through the stories. I don't care. Stop doing that. That's what's eating up your time. Devote this next year to your grand project. Write a play and then hire actors to put it on. I'll be in the front row clapping my fucking hands off. I'm going to start that standing ovation at your play. Whatever it is, you can do it. Man, oh man, or chick, oh chick. Person, oh person, you can do it. And remember, there's a direct correlation between the amount of effort exerted and the amount of happiness you'll feel at the end of that long journey. And you can get it done. And you will get it done. So that concludes this week's pep talk. I hope you found it inspiring. Okay. As promised, I'm going to recite for you fine folks a poem, and I have an original poem. And it's all to do with this wacky day we had a few weeks back where the sun, or I should say the sky, glowed bright orange. And it was eerie. And we had a wobbly kind of a day that day. Anyway, I wrote a poem about it, and unfortunately for me, I wish I had better researched this title before I gave it to my poem. But it's already in there. It's in the refrain. Because apparently this was a song written by some indie band back in 2009, and I only just found that out the other day when I Googled the title of my poem. I feel like such an idiot. But what did I learn from this situation? Exactly. No failures, so long as you learned. Anyway, with no more further ado, here it is, an original poem by me, yours truly, Clyde, always the bard of the lower hate, and it's entitled, The Day the Sun Forgot to Rise. One summer morning, dim and dark, believing dawn had yet to spark, I woke within my den. But heard I not one chirping lark, and lo, the time was 10. So scarce did I believe my eyes, it seemed the sun forgot to rise. Beyond my window beamed a glow, igniting all the block below, on which a blanket fell of cinders twirling down like snow from heavens cloaked in hell. In wistful echoes came the cries, they wailed, the sun's forgot to rise. The bay itself seemed set aflame, as if eternal twilight came to sizzle Sutro's ridge. And may it seem a silly claim, the fog it matched the bridge. We trembled under scarlet skies the day the sun forgot to rise, and all my fellows on the street, they sunk in agonized defeat, in shadows sepia-toned, preparing to their maker meet. The end is nigh, they moaned. We wallowed low in swarms of flies. On us the sun forgot to rise. Then sudden dimmed the amber mist, like Hades loosened up his fist, revealing bits of blue. In rapture rays of sunlight kissed the lingering drops of dew. We shook the city with our sighs to see the sun begin to rise. Now never might we feel surprise. We've seen the sun forget to rise. The end. Thank you very much. Hey everybody, I'm Clyde, always your happy host, and it's time for a sip of coffee. That was fantastic. So refreshing. Okay. Hey everybody, it's time for that wonderful segment of the Need a Lift podcast where I highlight one lucky artist every week. And don't worry, there's no shortage of them. We're not going to run out. So if you want to be the featured artist, all you need do is shoot me an email. And if you're looking for my email address, you can find it at ClydeAlways.com. That's right, just go to ClydeAlways.com. All right? And shoot me an email. Say, hey, Clyde, I want you to feature me. Shoot me an email. I'll shoot you the questionnaire. That's all there is to it. Okay. But until I start getting those emails, until those emails start pouring in my inbox, I will be highlighting certain influences of mine. Famous artistes, as it were. All right? And today's artist is none other than American cartoonist Daniel Clowes. Now, before I carry on, I understand his name is pronounced Clowes. It could be Clowes. It looks like clothes. But I always said Clowes because it seemed like the right way to pronounce it. Anyway, Daniel Clowes. He rose to fame and notoriety in the 90s when his graphic novel Ghost World was made into a feature film. Starring, what was that chick's name? Christina Ricci. Yes. Sexy Christina Ricci. And some, Scarlett Johansson too. Sexy Scarlett Johansson. The two of them. Banging stuff. Anyway, Daniel Clowes, what Daniel Clowes does best is he represents the way that people talk to each other. That young people talk to each other. I mean, he was the, J.D. Salinger. That's the guy who wrote Catcher in the Rye, isn't it? I don't know, man. I'm up here ranting and raving. But anyway, Daniel Clowes, if you've never read one of his graphic novels, I highly recommend it because it's got this intimate look. This intimate look into all of these different, seemingly ordinary situations, scenarios that somebody might be in, your friends might be in, these relationships between strangers and people who know each other quite well. This sort of dark humor involved. This bittersweet layer of society that we sort of overlook so often. Daniel Clowes. Now, beyond being a stellar script writer, I guess you could say, because when you think about it, at the end of the day, a graphic novel, it does start as a script, does it not? It's all the potential imagery of film or theater, plus the intimacy of the written word. I am quoting Understanding Comics. Don't get on me. Yes, I did read that in Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. Anyway, he's a hell of a script writer, this Daniel Clowes. But in addition to that, his line work is highly eye-pleasing. And I recommend it to anybody. Even if you don't really enjoy graphic literature, just pick up one of his works of art and take a good long look at it because the steadiness of his hand, the way he hatches. I mean, it's everything you love about Chris Ware and everything you love about R. Crumb wrapped into one. Now, if you don't read graphic novels, that probably doesn't mean anything to you. But what I'm saying is R. Crumb does a kind of a really scratchy, hatchy sort of a technique to bring, value out of strict black and white. Whereas Chris Ware has these highly precise hatch lines that taper to these beautiful points. It's almost like he's planned every single hatch line out to a T before he even started. Anyway, Daniel Clowes bridges that gap so spectacularly that anybody who has any experience dragging a nib across a Bristol board will understand what a genius it is we're looking at here. So, before I finish my little rant here about Daniel Clowes and what a brilliant graphic novelist he is, he's written such graphic novels as David Boring, Ghost World, Ice Haven, Mr. Wonderful, that's a great one. His most recent that I know of is called Patience, and I came across it at the library about a year ago, and it blew my mind. I didn't even know it was in there. Anyway, it came out in 2016. This new one called Patience is a sci-fi thriller to blow your mind. Anyway, and then there's collections of different short stories, one called Caricature, and one called 20th Century 8-Ball. Now, granted, 20th Century 8-Ball is mostly gags and whatnot. Anyway, this man, as a young man too, was putting out his own comics journal called 8-Ball, which he wrote and illustrated himself. A hard-working guy, a wonderful cartoonist, and now he makes his living doing drawings. He sells drawings to The New Yorker for, I'm sure, astronomical sums. And he lives in Oakland. Not to stalk him or anything, but I met him back when I lived in Oakland. I know that comes as a shock. I used to live in Oakland. Don't worry about it. I'm here now. But yeah, I used to live out there. And I would walk up and down Piedmont Avenue, and I swear to God, fuck, there he was. Daniel Clowes. How did I know what he looked like? Because I'd, seen interviews with the cat. He's kind of a weird-looking guy. He got a bald head and bug eyes, big ears, but he's a good one, man. Anyway, I approached him. I mean, I was starstruck. Like some people would get starstruck by seeing Lady Gaga. I would walk right by Lady Gaga. I wouldn't even know I fucking saw her. But Daniel Clowes? I was trembling. I was like a little boy meeting Babe Ruth. I come up to that cat, and I said, your books have changed my life. And he looked up at me with this real skeptical air about him, and he said, oh yeah, in a good way or a bad way? Anyway, we had a brief conversation, and I asked to shake his hand. And he said, all right, but be careful. I want you to break it. So anyway, because he really hates the buffs. He really hates the bodybuilder types. Not that I'm, I used to be a lot bigger than I am now, in the buff way. Anyway, Daniel Clowes, if you've never heard of him, please look him up. He is an artist to be revered. Daniel Clowes, our artist spotlight of the week. Okay, hey everybody, I'm Clyde always, and it's time for a wonderful anecdote. I'm not sure how wonderful this anecdote is, but I promise I will always leave you on some kind of anecdote that will either be amusing or enlightening in some weird way. And this one is really not much of either variety, but it's something. I gotta tell you that. It's something, and it's all about when I first took over as host and ringleader of the weekly open mic night at Cafe International, and I would venture that most of my fans listening to this are, either participants or friends of the open mic night at Cafe International, because it's quite a renowned event here in the city. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm running out of breath here, and we only got 2 minutes left. I can't believe it. We made it through another fucking podcast, everybody. Thank you for that. Anyway, I was just taking over as host and ringleader of Cafe International, and there's nothing like being new at a job that makes you feel a little touchy and defensive, all right? Because there's a thing called imposter complex or something like that, where you've been appointed a job, but you feel like maybe you're not all the way worthy of performing this duty, so you've got to really puff your chest up and lord it over everybody else. I'm the one, I'm the man. I'm the man who can fulfill the duties. All right? Now that's silly, I know, but it's a real thing. It's a phenomenon. It's a complex. So perhaps I was suffering from a little imposter syndrome when, what happens? This rock and roll guy. Oh, this cat. He looked like the lead singer of Whitesnake or some fucking thing. And he's got his low-cut shirt, like his chest hair coming out. His long blonde hair, tan. And he comes back there, he's like, hey, mate, you the host? I'm sorry, my Australian accent's terrible, but it's more of a parody of an Australian accent. I said, yeah, I'm the host. What do you want? What, do you want to sign up or something? He said, right, mate, my name's Curtis Y, I'm here from Australia, and blah, blah, blah. Right, so anyway, Curtis Y. You can see how he might be a nemesis of Clyde always. Anyway, Curtis Y. blew out the sound system that night. Now, I, being new to the game, didn't understand how the sound system worked. I was there hacking away at it. So when that thing blew out, I became visually flustered, as anybody would have. Now, this Curtis Y jumped right on that opportunity, man. He started introducing himself to the people behind the counter. Hey, I'm Curtis Y. If you ever need a host who knows what he's doing, come and talk to me. Oh, it's like, oh, you motherfucker. Anyway, hated Curtis Y. It would be so funny if he listened to this, too. It's so many years now gone since I encountered Curtis Y. I would love it, too, if somebody on the scene is like, oh, my God, I remember that guy, too. So anyway, that's what happened. He blew out the fucking sound system with his stupid guitar. Don't ask me how he did it. He just did it because he was on his set that the thing, went out. And I became visually flustered, lost my cool. What did I learn? Don't lose your cool no matter what. You better keep your cool. Anyway, the funny thing, the really, truly hilarious thing about Curtis Y is that he was a really intense Buddhist, which is a strange oxymoronic thing to be. But yeah, it was a day or two after that. After that little episode at Cafe International, I was at Hotel Utah performing in the open mic when Curtis Y got up on the stage, you know, and he was just like fucking, I don't know if he's nervous or what, but he was sweating and his face was all red and there was like this fucking vein just pum pulsating in his neck, right? And he's fucking going to strum his guitar, and I don't know what he did, man. His guitar not only blew out our crappy little sound system at Cafe International, but it fucked with the sounds. They've got a great big professional sound system over at Hotel Utah, and it fucked with that. I don't think it blew it all the way out, but it certainly like shorted one of the chords. He had to switch chords in the middle. But anyway, he's all completely stressing, like every muscle in his body is flexed, and that vein just keeps bulging, and he's got his guitar and he's gripping in his hands, and he's saying to us, he's looking at us, right, I've been thinking a lot about the butter. Sorry, I fucked up that line. I've been thinking a lot about the butter. Anyway, he carried on about the fucking butter. It was a stressful situation. So, Curtis Y, if you're listening to this, you brought very little joy to my life. But it's fun now to reminisce about what I learned in your presence. So kudos to you, Curtis Y, and kudos to you, listener, whoever you are. Go get your thing done. I know you can do it. You know you can do it, so let's do it. Just go get started. Put the pen to the paper. Put the chisel to the piece of marble. Fucking grab your crochet hook. Just do what you gotta do, because I know you can do it, all right? And if you need a lift, come and see me. Go to ClydeAlways.com, shoot me a line, whatever you need. I'm here to help. Clyde Always, your happy host, humbly at your service, signing off. We'll see you next week.